Under the blazing sun of a typical afternoon, Mark stumbled upon a sight that stopped him dead in his tracks. A lonely dog, sunken deep into the mud, whimpering quietly. His stomach dropped as he stepped closer, spotting a collar around the dog's neck. With trembling hands, he wiped away the dirt to reveal the faint inscription, and his eyes widened in disbelief. It's a police K9. Mark scanned his surroundings, desperately hoping to see a police officer nearby, but it was just him and the dog. As he stood there for not even 5 minutes, he felt the sun scorching his forehead, and he instinctively reached for his bottle of water. The dog's eyes, filled with such desperation, met his, and Mark knew it was thirsty too. He had no idea how long the dog had been stuck in the mud, or how long it had gone without water, so he kneeled down and reached out his hand. In his hand, he poured a bit of water close enough to the dog's mouth that it could drink. Mark knew then and there that he had to help the dog. After the dog drank some water, Mark began to try to pull it out of the mud. However, it was a lot harder than he initially thought. The mud worked like a suction cup around the dog's body, and with every pull, it felt like it got even more stuck. The dog whined and tried to move around, but nothing was working. Mark had to think about something else to get the dog out. He was now too invested to leave it behind. Suddenly, he thought about something. He had extra clothes in his trunk, including a belt and extra shoes with laces. He wondered if he could tie those things together. It could work as some kind of rope. So, he quickly ran to his car and began to make the makeshift rope. It wasn't much, and Mark's hopes were low, but it was either this or call the police. When the makeshift rope was done, Mark ran back and began to tie it around the dog. He dug his arms into the mud to get underneath the dog's legs for extra security. Finally, it was time to pull. His arms were covered in mud, making his hands slippery, so he wiped them on his jeans. He took a deep breath, placing his feet firmly on the ground and preparing to pull as hard as he could. Finally, he began to pull, starting slow but growing stronger. And to his surprise, the dog began to move. Slowly but surely, the dog moved out of the mud, and after a few minutes, it popped right out. Mark almost fell backward as he really leaned into his pull. The dog was weak and breathing heavily, but it was out. Mark quickly offered it some more water, but now a new question began to dawn on him. Where was the dog's owner? Most K9 dogs were assigned to a police officer, and it wasn't usual for them to be separated. Mark felt an eerie feeling wash over him. Could something have happened to the officer? He began to look around, pushing bushes aside and looking behind trees, but no traces were left behind. There was only one thing left to do now. Mark had to call the police. He looked down at the dog while dialing 911, wondering how on earth he was going to explain this strange situation. 911? What's your emergency? The dispatcher said. Mark hesitated for a moment. Yes, I've found a K9 dog stuck in the mud, he tried. Judging by the uncertain response from the dispatcher, Mark had to try again. I've freed a dog from the mud, but it's a K9 and there are no other people nearby. I'm in a forest, he said, hoping the dispatcher would get it now. Please send a police car or animal control, he added, and that seemed to do the trick. The dispatcher asked for his address, which he didn't have, but he gave her a description of where he was. When he hung up the phone, he didn't feel relieved at all. He wasn't even sure if the police or animal control were going to show up. Luckily, now that the dog wasn't stuck in the mud anymore, he could wait in the shadow. The dog was still very weak, so he picked it up and carried it to a big tree. They sat under the tree, waiting for what seemed like an eternity. Mark petted the dog and gave him some water from time to time, but the bottle was almost empty. He had some more water inside his car, but that was actually for emergencies. The dog eventually fell asleep, probably from exhaustion, while Mark waited some more. Mark checked the time every few minutes, but it seemed to go very slowly, and he wasn't very patient. The minutes crawled by like sluggish snails, and Mark's impatience grew with each passing second. He shifted his weight, feeling the discomfort of the hot ground beneath him. The dog slept soundly, oblivious to Mark's restless glances at his watch. The shadows stretched longer, and still, there was no sign of help. Even in the shadow, it was hot, so he told himself if the police weren't there after half an hour, he would go. Sweat beaded on Mark's forehead despite the relative coolness of the shade. He glanced at the dog, still sleeping peacefully, and made a decision. 30 minutes, he muttered to himself, setting his watch timer. If help didn't arrive by then, he would have to take matters into his own hands. Half an hour later, the police were nowhere to be seen, so Mark picked up the dog and placed it on the passenger seat. With a sigh of frustration, Mark scooped up the slumbering dog, cradling it gently in his arms. The dog stirred, but didn't wake as Mark carefully placed it in the front seat of his car. He glanced back at the forest one last time, a mix of disappointment and determination in his eyes. In the car, he had air conditioning, so he and the dog could cool down a bit while he drove back to town. As the car's cool air enveloped them, Mark felt a sense of relief wash over him. The dog shifted in its sleep, breathing more evenly now in the comfortable temperature. Mark adjusted the vents, directing cool air toward the dog, ensuring its comfort as they journeyed back to civilization. Mark drove straight to the police station and walked inside, holding the dog in his arms, turning the heads of various officers. With purpose in his stride, Mark entered the police station, the sleeping dog cradled gently against his chest. Heads turned as officers took notice of the unusual sight. Mark approached the front desk, determination etched on his face as he prepared to seek help for the abandoned canine companion he had rescued. "I believe this is yours," Mark asked as he placed the muddy dog on the receptionist's desk. The dog was still asleep at the time, but slowly began to wake up. With gentle hands, Mark carefully deposited the tired canine onto the clean surface of the receptionist's desk. The dog stirred from its slumber, blinking groggily as it adjusted to the sudden change in surroundings. The receptionist was taken aback by Mark's bold move and looked around her, unsure of what to do. Wide-eyed, the receptionist stared at the unexpected guest, now occupying her workspace. She glanced at Mark, then back at the dog, a perplexed expression crossing her face. Unsure of how to react, she fidgeted with her pen, silently pleading for someone to intervene. A police officer walked up to them and asked what was going on, so Mark explained the situation. As a uniformed officer approached, Mark took a deep breath and prepared to recount the events that led him to the police station. With a calm demeanor, he detailed the discovery of the abandoned dog and his efforts to seek assistance. The officer listened intently, nodding occasionally as Mark spoke. After hearing the dog was a canine, the police officer looked surprised. "We don't have this breed of canine dogs in our station," he said. A furrow appeared on the officer's brow as he processed Mark's revelation. "Canine?" he repeated, disbelief coloring his tone. He glanced around the station as if expecting a hidden cache of specialized dogs to materialize. "This is news to me," he admitted, puzzled by the unexpected turn of events. Mark was stunned. If this dog didn't belong to one of the local police officers, it would be a lot harder to find its owner. "Can you find out who the owner is through an online system or something?" he asked hopefully. Realization dawned on Mark as he grasped the implications of the officer's response. He turned to the officer, his eyes pleading for a solution in the absence of a straightforward lead. "Is there any way to track down the owner?" he inquired, a glimmer of hope shining through his uncertainty. If only things were that easy, the officer shook his head and shrugged his shoulder. "Sorry, man, but I don't think we can do anything for you," he said as he walked away. But Mark wasn't about to give up. Disappointment weighed heavily on Mark's shoulders as he watched the officer's retreating figure. With determination burning in his chest, he refused to accept defeat, even in the face of adversity. The dog's strength was now back, and it jumped off the table and shook the mud off of its fur, barking loudly at the officer who was walking away. With newfound vigor, the dog sprang from the table, vitality coursing through its limbs. It shook off the remnants of its muddy ordeal, a defiant bark punctuating its protest against the officer's indifference. Mark watched, surprised by the sudden display of spirit from his canine companion. Mark found it a bit strange, as it actually seemed like the dog recognized the officer, but not the receptionist or other officers walking by. Puzzlement furrowed Mark's brow as he observed the peculiar behavior of the dog. It was as if the canine had singled out the departing officer from the crowd, a recognition that left Mark feeling uneasy. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this situation than met the eye. "You sure you don't recognize this dog?" Mark tried one last time, but that struck a nerve with the officer as he felt like Mark was testing him. Tension crackled in the air as Mark's question hung between them, the officer's demeanor shifting from indifference to irritation. Mark's persistence grated on the officer's nerves, sparking a defensive response as he bristled at the implication of doubt. The officer snapped and told Mark he had to leave as he pushed him toward the door, so Mark left with the dog by his side. With a sharp retort, the officer's patience reached its limit, his tone sharp as he ushered Mark toward the exit. Resigned but undeterred, Mark acquiesced, casting a lingering glance over his shoulder as he departed, the faithful dog at his side, their journey far from over. Mark drove to a nearby town to ask their local police officers the same question. Determination fueled Mark's journey as he navigated the familiar roads to the neighbouring town. With a sense of purpose driving him forward, he sought out the assistance of a new set of law enforcement officers, hopeful that they might hold the key to unravelling the mystery of the abandoned dog. Sadly, no one recognised the dog or knew someone with a canine. Disappointment clouded Mark's features as he received one negative response after another. Despite his efforts, the search for the dog's owner hit a dead end, leaving Mark feeling disheartened. It seemed that with each passing interaction, the likelihood of reuniting the dog with its rightful owner grew increasingly slim. The day was coming to an end, so Mark drove home, deciding to keep the dog for the night. As dusk settled over the horizon, Mark made the decision to provide temporary shelter for the weary canine. With a sense of responsibility weighing on his mind, he guided his car homeward, the anticipation of a restful evening tempered by the presence of his newfound companion. At home, he cleaned the dog up and went to bed, feeling exhausted from the busy day. With gentle hands and a warm heart, Mark tended to the dog's needs, providing comfort and care after a long day of uncertainty. As exhaustion crept over him like a heavy blanket, Mark completed his nightly rituals, preparing for a well-deserved rest in the company of his four-legged guest. The next morning, he woke up feeling energized and ready to find the dog's owner. With the dawn of a new day, renewed determination coursed through Mark's veins. As sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the room, Mark rose from his slumber with a sense of purpose. Today would be the day he unlocked the secrets hidden within the dog's mysterious past, setting the stage for a journey filled with hope and discovery. Now that the dog was clean, Mark looked at the collar again. It really said K9, but there was also a name, Ollie. With a curious expression, Mark scrutinized the collar, his eyes narrowing in concentration. The engraved name, Ollie, caught his attention, prompting a surge of questions to swirl in his mind. Could this be the key to unlocking the dog's past? "Is your name Ollie?" Mark asked the dog, and its ears perked up, indicating the dog's name was indeed Ollie. With a hopeful tone, Mark addressed the dog, his gaze searching for any sign of recognition. To his surprise, the dog's ears twitched at the sound of its name, a subtle yet unmistakable confirmation of its identity. A flicker of excitement ignited within Mark as he realized he was one step closer to solving the mystery. It was a step in the right direction, but Mark still had no idea how he would ever find the dog owner. Despite the newfound revelation of the dog's name, Mark found himself confronted with the daunting reality of his situation. With each passing moment, the task of reuniting Ollie with his owner seemed increasingly insurmountable. Yet, Mark refused to succumb to despair, determined to explore every avenue in his quest for answers. He decided to post a picture of the dog with a description of what happened on Facebook, hoping the online community would help him. Fingers poised over the keyboard, Mark composed a heartfelt plea for assistance, accompanied by a photograph of Ollie. With a sense of urgency, he detailed the events leading up to his encounter with the abandoned dog, appealing to the compassion of the vast online community in his search for Ollie's owner. After he posted the photo, Mark decided he wanted to go back to the place where he had found the dog and look again for clues. With determination fueling his every step, Mark retraced his path to the site where he first discovered Ollie. As he approached the familiar surroundings, a sense of anticipation welled within him, mingled with the hope of uncovering new clues that might shed light on Ollie's mysterious origins. As soon as he arrived at the spot, the dog began to sniff around and make whining noises in one specific direction. Mark observed Ollie's behavior with keen interest, his heart quickening with anticipation. The dog's instincts seemed to guide him with purpose, honing in on a particular scent or sound that eluded Mark's senses. With a sense of urgency, Mark followed Ollie's lead, trusting in the canine's intuition to unveil the secrets hidden within the forest. Trusting the dog's police training, Mark followed Ollie wherever it would lead him to. With unwavering faith in Ollie's abilities, Mark forged ahead, his steps echoing the rhythm of the dog's determined stride. Each twist and turn of the forest path brought them closer to the heart of the mystery, guided by the silent language shared between man and canine. With Ollie as his steadfast companion, Mark ventured deeper into the unknown, bound by a bond forged in trust and loyalty. They walked through the forest and even went off the path. It was clear that Ollie knew exactly where he was going. Amidst the dense foliage and dappled sunlight, Mark and Ollie forged their way through the untamed wilderness. Ollie's confident stride never faltered, leading them through winding trails and overgrown paths with unerring precision. As they ventured off the beaten track, Mark marveled at Ollie's innate sense of direction, a beacon of guidance amidst the wild expanse. After 15 minutes, Mark checked his phone and saw that he had almost 20 notifications from Facebook. With a sigh, Mark paused in his tracks, his attention momentarily diverted by the digital chatter emanating from his phone. Notifications clamored for his attention, a stark contrast to the tranquil solitude of the forest. With a sense of obligation, Mark scrolled through the flurry of updates, momentarily disconnected from the natural world unfolding around him. He paused for a second to check them, scanning through the comments under the photo, but no one seemed to know who the dog belonged to. They were all just expressing their worries. With furrowed brows, Mark sifted through the sea of comments, his heart sinking with each fruitless search for a clue to Ollie's origins. Despite the outpouring of concern from well-meaning strangers, the elusive answer to Ollie's identity remained frustratingly out of reach. When Mark looked up from his phone, he realized that Ollie was gone. Panic surged through Mark's veins as he scanned his surroundings, his heart pounding in his chest. The once familiar landscape now seemed alien and foreboding without the reassuring presence of his canine companion. With a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach, Mark grappled with the unsettling reality of Ollie's sudden disappearance. He frantically searched his surroundings but couldn't find Ollie anywhere. Desperation fueled Mark's frantic search, his eyes darting from tree to tree, his voice calling out Ollie's name in a desperate plea for reassurance. Every rustle of leaves and distant sound sent a jolt of hope coursing through his veins, only to be dashed by the cruel realization that Ollie remained elusive, hidden from sight. Mark couldn't believe that he had lost the dog again and wondered if Ollie had smelled something he recognized and ran after it. Doubt gnawed at Mark's resolve as he grappled with the unsettling notion that Ollie's disappearance may have been deliberate. Fears and uncertainties clouded his mind, casting shadows of doubt over the bond he shared with his four-legged companion. With each passing moment, the weight of uncertainty bore down on Mark's shoulders, threatening to overwhelm him. Just as Mark wanted to walk back to his car, he heard a gunshot and Ollie whining. Startled by the sudden eruption of sound, Mark froze in his tracks, his senses on high alert. The sharp crack of gunfire pierced the air, followed by the unmistakable sound of Ollie's distressed whimpers. With a surge of adrenaline coursing through his veins, Mark's instincts kicked into overdrive as he raced toward the source of the commotion, his heart hammering in his chest. He quickly ran toward the sound of where the gunshot came from and found Ollie standing with its tail between its legs, hiding behind a bush. Relief flooded through Mark as he stumbled upon the scene, his eyes locking onto the trembling form of Ollie cowering behind a bush. With gentle hands and soothing words, Mark approached his canine companion, offering comfort and reassurance amidst the palpable fear that hung in the air. Ollie was very scared, and Mark wanted to know who the heck fired toward a dog if it was aimed at Ollie in the first place. Concern etched across his features. Mark approached Ollie cautiously, his heart heavy with worry for his canine companion. With gentle words and a reassuring touch, he sought to calm Ollie's trembling form, determined to unravel the mystery of the gunshot that had shattered the tranquility of the forest. "Hello! Who's there?" Mark shouted, and he saw someone moving behind a tree. Tension hung thick in the air as Mark's voice echoed through the forest, his senses on high alert for any sign of movement. With bated breath, he strained his eyes to pierce the shadows, his heart pounding with anticipation at the prospect of confronting the mysterious figure lurking just beyond reach. "Get that dog out of here!" a man shouted, but Mark couldn't see his face, only his silhouette. Alarm flared within Mark as the stern command reverberated through the trees, the stranger's voice tinged with an unmistakable edge of hostility. With a furrowed brow, Mark warily assessed the shadowy figure before him, grappling with the unsettling realization that he stood on the precipice of a potentially dangerous confrontation. Mark asked the man about the gunshot, and the man said it had been him, but that it wasn't specifically aimed at Ollie. Curiosity burned within Mark as he sought to unravel the truth behind the gunshot that had shattered the tranquility of the forest. With a mixture of apprehension and determination, he confronted the shadowy figure, his voice steady as he pressed for answers amidst the tense standoff. "I thought it was a deer," the man said as he slowly stepped into the light, and as soon as his face was visible, Ollie began to wag his tail. Relief washed over Mark as the tension of the encounter dissolved in the warm glow of understanding. With a sense of reconciliation, the man's explanation diffused the lingering tension, paving the way for a newfound sense of camaraderie amidst the tranquil embrace of the forest. The man wore camouflage clothing and held a big rifle in his hands. "What are you doing with my dog?" the man asked Mark. Startled by the sudden appearance of the hunter, Mark's heart quickened with apprehension as he met the piercing gaze of the man before him. With a furrowed brow, he struggled to formulate a response, grappling with the unsettling realization that Ollie belonged to someone else. Mark explained everything that happened, adding, "You don't look like an officer at all." With a sense of urgency, Mark recounted the events that had led him to encounter Ollie and the subsequent search for his elusive owner. Words spilled from his lips in a rush as he sought to convey the truth of their chance meeting amidst the quiet solitude of the forest, his voice echoing with earnest sincerity. The man chuckled as he whistled, and Ollie ran to him. "Ollie is no real canine dog. It's just a collar I found," the man explained. Relief washed over Mark as the truth of Ollie's identity came to light, dispelling the lingering mystery that had shrouded their encounter. With a wry smile, the man's revelation unveiled the simple truth behind Ollie's collar, casting aside any lingering doubts with a shared moment of understanding. The man explained that he was a hunter and that he lived in the forest. He also found Ollie when he was just a puppy and found the collar a bit later. Curiosity piqued, Mark listened intently as the hunter shared his tale of life amidst the wilderness, his words weaving a tapestry of adventure and solitude. With each passing moment, the hunter's story unveiled the hidden depths of the forest and the bonds forged amidst its tranquil embrace. The hunter explained that Ollie had gone missing after he went outside for the day and that he had feared the worst. Sympathy welled within Mark as he listened to the hunter's tale of loss and uncertainty, his heart heavy with empathy for the trials that had beset his newfound acquaintance. With a sense of reassurance, the hunter's words offered solace amidst the lingering shadows of fear, paving the way for a shared journey of understanding and companionship. Mark was happy that he had found Ollie's owner and was even happier that he had decided to come back to the forest. Gratitude flooded his heart as he witnessed the heartwarming reunion between Ollie and his owner, a testament to the enduring bond that had weathered the trials of separation. With a smile, Mark marveled at the resilience of friendship amidst the tranquil embrace of the forest, his spirit buoyed by the shared joy of their reunion. He said goodbye to Ollie and the hunter and went home. Emotions swirled within Mark as he bid farewell to Ollie and the hunter, a bittersweet farewell that marked the end of their shared journey amidst the whispering trees. With a lingering glance cast over his shoulder, he took his leave of the forest, his heart heavy with the weight of parting yet uplifted by the cherished memories forged amidst its tranquil embrace. Once home, Mark updated his Facebook community, explaining what happened. Fingers flying across the keyboard, Mark shared the tale of his encounter with Ollie and the hunter, his words echoing with the warmth of camaraderie and the enduring power of friendship. With each keystroke, he invited his online community to share in the tale of their journey, their hearts touched by the simple yet profound bonds forged amidst the quiet solitude of the forest. He never spoke to the hunter again, but he thought about Ollie from time to time. Memories of Ollie lingered within Mark's heart, a gentle reminder of the fleeting yet profound connections that had graced his life amidst the tranquil embrace of the forest. Though the passage of time dimmed the immediacy of their encounter, the memory of Ollie and the hunter remained etched within his soul, a cherished remnant of a journey that had forever changed him. Mark vowed never to walk away from someone in need again, having felt what it was like to help someone. Determination burned within Mark's heart as he made a solemn vow to himself, a pledge born of the profound lessons gleaned from his encounter with Ollie and the hunter. With a renewed sense of purpose, he resolved to embrace the opportunity to lend a helping hand, his spirit fortified by the enduring power of compassion and empathy.